Well, welcome to Quiet Cracking and How to Be Resilient During Difficult Times. And again, my name is Brenda DeBastiani, and I've been at ICE for many years, so it's a thing to come home. So thank you for inviting me again. Today, we're going to discuss some things that maybe you've heard of, but maybe you're not real familiar with, or some of you may be experiencing them. First is quiet quitting, quiet firing, and then quiet cracking. And we're going to learn some ways you can actually overcome those issues that if you are having them. First, a little bit about me and my family. In the middle, you'll see my son and his wife, Clarissa, Cody and Clarissa, and they just got married in November of last year. My husband is to the left. We're going to be celebrating our 40-year wedding anniversary in April. We were high school sweethearts, and he's actually here. You'll probably see us later. And then to the left, that's our daughter, Megan. She and her fiance to the far right, they're getting married in May of this year. So lots of exciting things going on in our family. And I said I usually put a picture of my dog in here, but I didn't think of it. But she's the love of my life also. She's 9 years old and she sits by me every day while I'm working. I work remotely. Have a poo. It's a little thing. So some disclosures to get started with. I am not a physician, a psychiatrist, a therapist. So what I'm sharing with you today are just my personal things that I have learned over the years. My experiences are solely my own. They do not represent my current or my former employers. I'm going to talk about some personal things here. I don't want to diss anyone, but I just want you to know that it does not represent them. It's my experiences that I'm sharing. And then some of the information I'm going to share is very personal. So if I get emotional, it's okay. I've learned to be resilient, so I will be okay. Just give me a second if that happens. Sometimes it sneaks up on me. I don't even know when it's going to happen. So usually I'm good. So quiet quitting, this term came along back in 2022 by Zaid Khan, and he was a 20-something engineer. He started talking about quiet quitting. And what he did was he talked about no longer is work life. I'm just working because I have to. It's not going to define who I am. And it's no longer defining yourself by your labor. And then all of a sudden, the quiet quitting hashtag came along. That was in 2022 as well. And it was people getting on the internet and talking about themselves, talking about their experiences. Y'all remember this? Do you remember all the quiet quitting videos? Maybe you weren't active in social media, but it was a big thing. So according to Gallup, quiet quitting describes a psychological withdrawal from your employer. Basically, you're showing up for work, you're doing the bare minimum, you're just getting by, and that's what you do. So you're still employed, but you're just not giving your all. So less than 2 weeks after the first video came out, then all of a sudden the national news media saw this and they started talking about this. The Guardian said, quiet quitting, while doing the bare minimum work, has gone global. So people were no longer picking up extra projects. They were no longer helping anyone that was struggling. They're just going in, nose down, do your job, go home. You can set your watch by a quiet quitter. If anybody worked with a quiet quitter before, yes. It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. You really can. They come in at 8 o'clock or whatever time their start time is. You can hear them closing up their desk and they're out the door. There's nothing wrong with working your 8 hours and going home, but I find it very unusual that you can just stop in the middle of a project at exactly 4:30 if that's your quit time. I never really had a quit time whenever I was working. So I worked as a rad tech, I worked as a CT tech, I worked as a director. Now I'm president of MTMI. I don't have a start and quit time. I go when I need to and I leave when I need to. And even whenever I was clocking in and clocking out, if I needed to stay late to finish up my patient or whatever was going on in my department, that's what I did. Now that's not the norm. A lot of people have stopped doing that. So if you're a quiet quitter, you're a loser. Ouch. The Wall Street Journal, that's what they had to say about a quiet quitter. And then Kevin O'Leary from CNBC said it's worse than COVID. It's worse than that virus. So next, Connor Kaimi, he was a very activist on TikTok. And he shared a video, and I'm not going to play it because it's very colorful language. But he said, I'm not going to, to the person who's older that's making fun of us that are quiet quitters, I'm not going to pull myself up on bootstraps any longer, come in and do a 60-hour week. I'm not going to do it. Whenever I'm calling off from work because my family is sick or because my kids are sick or whatever it is, you need to find somebody to replace myself at home, and you don't care about me, why would I do that? any of this resonating with you? Because I mean, I've experienced that as an employee. I felt like my company didn't really care about me. They cared about getting the job done. Well, what about my family? So those things were happening, but whenever you look at this is a person who is a Gen Z. Gen Zs were talking about it more openly. So the Gallup poll results from 2022 said the largest group of workers, the millennials born after 1989, they were not engaged, but they were being quiet during this time. It's the Gen Zs that were doing all the videos. They're the ones that are talking about everything. The millennials were living it. They were not engaged, but the Gen Zs were actually talking. Why is that? Because they had already grown up with the digital era. They grew up with a phone in their hand, a laptop, or a tablet in their hand from a very young age. So they were already tied to expressing themselves compared to a millennial or anybody else. So this is not a new thing, the rebellion. Every era, every generation has come about, has put a stamp on what is it, what's defining me as work versus my life. So these are just generalities. Not everybody falls into this. So my daughter is a millennial. I don't know that she acts like a millennial. She probably more like a Gen X. My son, definitely a millennial. So it's just all in the personality types, I think. So the baby boomers, they're conformists. Their parents lived through the Great Depression. So they knew what it was like to work hard. But the baby boomers did experience Woodstock. They did know how to have a good time. So they taught their Gen X kids to be hard workers, to have strong work ethics. That's what they taught them, but also to enjoy your life. The Gen X's have a strong sense that skills are needed. They taught their millennial kids to do something that you love, but have a skill to back it up. So millennials learned about social media towards the end of their childhood. We talked about that. The Gen Zs, they're blurred. Their boundaries are very blurred. They're actually believing that digital and life are tied together. That's not how we were grown. That isn't how we were raised, so we don't feel that way. So COVID hit, and it rocked everybody's world, no matter what age group you were in. The older group, they retired if they could, changed professions, they got out as soon as they could if they could. Not everyone could. You had disenchantment with work, quiet quitting, and then that new term came about, quiet cracking. The Gen Z, what we witnessed from them was they're verbalizing how they're feeling to their employers, to the world, but it wasn't a personal attack to anyone. They were making their mark. They were saying, I understand what y'all are doing, but this is how I feel. And as a group, most Gen Zs do not believe that work and life are really tied together. Work does not define me. So what we witnessed was an evolution. It confused us. Most of us older people were going, what is wrong with this younger generation? There's nothing wrong with the younger generation. They're just putting their mark on, this is what's important to me. This is what I lived through. This is what I experienced, and this is how I feel. To expand a little bit more on the Gen Zs, 42% think that social media affects how they feel about themselves. So as an imaging leader, think about how we could capitalize on that information. If you have an intranet, if you have something digital that you're expressing thanks to your people, they believe digital media is what actually defines who they are. They tie that together. I don't know that all of us have taken the time to really capitalize on that information. So we're disenchanted with work, and then all of a sudden we become disengaged. And it comes in stages. The first is initial disinterest. You may be in a meeting and somebody's just kind of like, spacing out. That's a little bit of disinterest. It's just the first phase of disengagement. And then you're going to see a decline in performance. When you see somebody starting to decline in performance, it's time you have to have that crucial conversation to say, hey, I'm noticing something's not quite right. I'm not sure what's going on. But if you personally are starting to feel a decline in performance, you better check yourself. What's going on? What can I do? How can I get more disengaged or get more engaged? Because disengagement leads to lots of bad things in your life. So employee disengagement, withdraw from team activities. You may see somebody who just sits off to themselves. They'd rather just not even be part of that team. What's going on? Again, having crucial conversations. It could be in your staff meetings. You're having these people that are disengaged and the negative attitudes start coming out. When you start seeing them kind of talking badly about the company, about policies and procedures, or even about your management style, All of those things are showing that they're disengaged. And then lastly, the last stage is increased absenteeism. So it could be that the person is calling off from work. Their seat's up here. People is calling off from work. They are coming in late or they're leaving early. All of those things affect your operation, and you really can't stand for that. So you have to have conversations. And if you personally start feeling like, oh my goodness, I can't go in there. I can't do it one more day. Those mental health days, those kinds of things start popping up. It's telling you that you are becoming disengaged or you are disengaged. So quiet firing is a term that originated in 2022. What is that? It describes how managers were unable to have the crucial conversations, so therefore they just let things work out on their own. They were not talking to the employees when they needed to, and they were kind of letting things just happen. So the managers maybe had a toxic environment, and they just let that toxic environment continue. It's a poor leadership style, and it's the wrong thing to do. So why would anybody ever choose to do that? Because COVID happened, and we had PPE that was wrong, PPE that we were asking our employees to do things with that we knew that they were telling us the wrong thing to do. So we as leaders were just like checked out, you know, whatever, however this is going to turn out. I lived through this too as an imaging leader. It was uncharted territory, and you just had to go with the flow. The staffing schedules, it was crazy. You had people that you were sending to IT to answer phones. You were doing all kinds of crazy things to try to avoid layoffs. Some of us did have to lay off. And then watching patients or loved ones die. It could be that as a leader, we were actually on the frontline staff, or we're watching our staff see horrible things that they're reporting back, and that also affected the leaders. And then overwhelmed with new requirements and not enough support. Everybody was experiencing this. So because of all these experiences, some managers thought that it was just easier to quietly fire. I don't have the manpower, the capacity to take on one more thing, one more crucial conversation. So it's the easy button, but were they quietly cracking? So what is quiet cracking? Quiet cracking describes a lack of fulfillment at work. So it often pertains to job satisfaction. The difference between quiet cracking and quiet firing is, or I'm sorry, quiet quitting is with quiet cracking, you may not see a difference in their performance. They're showing up, they're still giving 110%, but inside they're dying. Have any of y'all experienced that? So it might not necessarily manifest in the performance, so it's very hard to identify. Only the person going through it is going to know. So according to Talent LMS, the survey they did, over 50% of recent survey respondents have experienced it. And here, has anyone experienced quiet cracking? Anybody think after you hear it? So 20% say that they experience it constantly. So the 2025 Gallup poll says 52% employees in North America are not engaged in their jobs. 17% of these employees are actively disengaged. You know what we call the actively disengaged? They're the disruptors. They're the ones that come to work because you're paying them to come to work every day, and to kind of create that toxic environment, we're paying them to do that without having conversations and working them out of their job or reforming them to come around to being engaged again. That's what you have. So what caused this whole thing is, whenever you're looking at the quiet cracking, it's caused by the pandemic, and it's not just one age group. And it affects all levels of workers, not just the entry or mid-levels. That means your administrators, your CEOs, your VPs, everybody's experiencing this because of what they experienced through COVID. So according to Talent LMS, 1 in 3 surveyors experience workplace unhappiness occasionally. 1 in 5 say they experience it frequently or constantly, and 50% say that they aren't experiencing quiet cracking. However, based on the information that they provided when they did the survey, 54% are experiencing quiet cracking. Even though they're not admitting it, that's over half of the people working are experiencing quiet cracking. So what causes it? Insecurity from lack of training. Think about your X-ray students. They weren't even getting clinicals during COVID time. So they somehow graduated, they passed their boards, they came to you as new employees. Well, did they get a good education? Maybe not. Then we threw them in to staffing that was crazy. Our staff was already cracking. So they didn't really probably get a good education, new orientation when they arrived. So they have insecurities. Have we addressed those? Have we come back around and actually fixed what we did during that horrible time? Sometimes no, they may still have learning gaps, education gaps that we need to take care of. And the one thing is, when you think about the lack of training, we right now have curbed that. Our students now are getting better education. I survey our leaders that we talk to, and they say that the students are in better shape now than they were, 3 years ago. Role ambiguity and unclear expectations, the dotted imaginary lines that we've created. All of us are doing more with less. It may not even be in our job description, but yet we're asked to do all these things. That's causing us to crack. Overload from poor workload management. When you're short-staffed, you have the travelers in. All those things are compiling and creating that perfect storm. All of these things are overloading our staff. Isolation of lack of support. They may feel like you don't care. Fear and confusion around AI. I just had a conversation on Thursday with an employee who said, I'm really afraid that my job's going to be replaced with AI. And I'm like, well, I mean, I may be old school, but I don't see how anybody can be replaced, because you have to physically touch patients. You have to have somebody that's going to be there. So I don't believe imaging will have that, but it may, we know how it's impacting other areas. So it is coming, but I don't think a robot will replace at this moment. And then career uncertainty. So you have these brand new techs that are entering the workforce. What did I just do to myself? Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? How many of you ever asked, what do I want to be when I grow up? And you're in your 40s? I was asking that question. So many of us have experienced that. Lack of growth opportunities. Fortunately for imaging, there are always growth opportunities. There's always things that you can do. You can expand, you can cross-train, you can use the building blocks on your education and learn more, get a different degree, go into something different. So we do have that, but not everybody feels that they have. They may not have the bandwidth or the financial capacity to do something new, so they feel like they're stuck. Lack of recognition and reward. Everybody needs an attaboy. Work-life imbalance. I don't know about you all, but I was working 60-hour work weeks, and my job just felt overwhelming. And whenever you have that imbalance, how can you say no when you see people around you losing their jobs? Okay, I'll do it. That's what you have to say. So managerial disconnect and unheard concerns. 47% of employees say their managers do not listen. So maybe you're listening, but do you hear? Maybe that's what they're really saying. So what cracking normally looks like, it's the employee does the bare minimum, or they're fully doing their work. That's the tricky part. They feel stuck, and internally they are disengaged. So this is my husband and me and my dog. I do have a picture of my dog. We are driving from West Virginia, where I've worked for 33 years at the same facility. Some of you know this story about me, but some people don't. I see some new faces. So I was working at the same place 33 years. I grew up there. I was a rad tech, CT tech, supervisor, director. I worked for many, many years there. And I just felt very unfulfilled in the job that I was doing. So I knew I needed to make a change. And it was gradual. It wasn't all at once. So I went ahead and got my bachelor's degree. I went and got my master's. And then I started looking. I started looking for a job that I'm like, okay, this is going to check the box, So you don't want to jump out of the pot into a frying pan. You never know if it's going to be worse somewhere else. But I really did some investigations. I found a job that I wanted in Spring Hill, Florida, which is near Tampa. So that was where we wanted to retire. So my goal was at 60, I was retiring. So I went ahead and took this job. We were getting a start on that. So when you think about what I threw away was the known job, and I packed up everything. I left my daughter, and my son lives in Orlando. So gave up one, got another, I don't know. But so how do you fix quiet cracking? You have to make an internal decision to fix it. You have to identify your feelings. You have to label them. What am I feeling? You have to organize your thoughts. You have to have a plan. And then whenever you're ready to talk about these things, you meet with your trusted manager, and notice that I have the word trusted manager. Speak clearly, succinctly, and with brevity. You can't just go on, because they're not really going to listen to you, because they're also experiencing quiet cracking more than likely. So I was not working for someone who I could trust. I was seeing people who maybe were having conversations and they were being let go. When you're an at-will hire, which is 49 out of the 50 states, If you go in with an ultimatum, it could be that you got your ultimatum, you're out the door. So I had to have a backup plan. So that's what I was doing with my education and everything. So I'm not encouraging y'all to find new jobs. What I'm encouraging you to do is look around, what's going on in your facility. When you're having this education or having those meetings with your team, are you having the conversations that, can you trust them? So make sure it's a trusted person. So you're going to clarify, what is it that your issues are? Is it workload, roles, expectation? Is it training opportunities? Maybe you're doing the job of 5 people. Maybe everybody is not confident that you're working around and you're having to assume all those roles. And maybe it's advancement. Maybe they created all these little dotted lines for you and you're over all these new facilities, but they haven't given you a new role or pay. So once the issues are expressed, you wait for improvements. Is there a deadline when you're meeting with them? Are you saying by this date, I need to see, something to improve? If no improvement, do you start looking for another job? Or in 2019, when I got my new person that I was leading or directing, I was reporting to, whenever I got that person in May, by October, I knew it was not going to work. So in 2019, I already knew this is not going to work. I knew, so I lived it for 4 years. So when you're looking at these things, if no improvement by a deadline, either they have to change or you have to change. So you can have the conversation, but if you see no change, you're going to have to make a decision. So turning around quiet cracking, it's all about trust. So I have successfully turned around some quiet crackers. I had a technologist who was working in CT who came to me. She was going to resign. She's just, I just can't do it anymore. And I'm like, what exactly are the issues? We started talking about it. And basically, she was overwhelmed because her team wasn't listening to her. She was a charge tech. So I had a conversation about that, and I started coaching her. She didn't report directly to me, but she had in the past whenever I was the supervisor. So we had that trust. So I was able to turn her around, meet with her. I met at least once every week. We talked about what was going on. I gave her coaching. I was coaching her on how to build her team. She saw things in black and white. I said, you have to learn to see things more in gray. Like, you can't just expect everybody to do it your way or the highway. You have to be able to learn. So I was coaching her on all that. And I did turn it around. So that was a good thing that I've experienced. So the one thing, whenever I turned in my resignation in May of 2022, everybody was shocked. Why? Because I did not vent to anyone in my department. I did have 2 people that I talked to, my prior director, who was no longer at the facility, and an HR person who was no longer at the facility, and my family. Those are the only people I confided in because I didn't know who I could trust. You think you can trust somebody unless they can use that information against you. So be very wise in who you're venting to. So human nature makes us want to talk about things, to vent, to get it out of your system. But there's a cycle of venting. It's an excuse to be negative. If you aren't willing to make a change, then you're half the problem. So you have to focus on the positives and get out of that negative cycle. Harping on the negative aspects can be harmful to your well-being. If you're living it over, day in, day out, and you're not making a change, whose fault is that? It's your own. Rumination. That is when your head, you're thinking things over and over, how I could have played this differently. I could have said this differently. Why'd they say that? And you just keep reliving the past. That is very negative, and it's very harmful to yourself to do that. Co-rumination, and you see this in staff meetings a lot, where one person says something and they all jump on the bandwagon and they're all talking about all the negative things. That is very counterproductive, as you know. And it's very hard to listen because you're like, okay, I'm listening. I don't want to be one of those managers that say that I'm not listening. So you're listening, but what do you need to do? Complaining together intensifies stress and the perceived severity of the problem. If you have a whole bunch of people talking about it and they just keep talking about it, it's horrible. Oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever, when it's really nothing that they should be concerned about because it didn't even happen. Negativity breeds negativity. You're more exhausted, concerned, and overwhelmed. And then initial venting goal is to reduce stress, but when you continue to do it, you'll end up with burnout if you just keep harping on it. So if you must vent, choose wisely. Choose someone outside your department who you can trust, who can you share with that will not repeat. That's a hard one. Focus on your feelings. If you are going to talk about something, how are you feeling? Don't make accusations. You don't know how the other person's thinking or what they're saying, but you do really need to focus on how am I feeling. Be mindful of the impact of you sharing information. Is going to bring the other person down. And then seek perspective. If workplace issues such as harassment, discrimination, or policy violation, obviously you need to go to HR if there's going to be investigation. But keep in mind, HR's job is to protect the organization. So if you have a bad director or bad VP or bad whatever that you're reporting to, and you want to make an accusation against them, they're going to protect your company. So you don't want to probably do that unless you have really good claims of what's going on in facts. Talking to a therapist can provide a safe and confidential space. A lot of employers have EAP, and that would be a good place to start if you needed to talk to someone. 6 ways to create a more positive work environment. Recognize that co-rumination as soon as it starts. So when you're in that staff meeting, you're going to allow them to talk for like 5 minutes. Okay, what? Get your watch out. Let them talk, and then let's move on to solutions. Okay, guys, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but how are we going to resolve this issue? Because let them all have a little say, but there's some people that won't stop talking, like me right now. But whenever you're there, and you're in that staff meeting, you need to kind of learn how to put it. Okay, we got this. Let's move on. We'll get back to this. Focus on what you can achieve and brainstorm potentials and solutions. After discussing possible solutions, check to see if the improvements were made. Circle back, making sure that, okay, did I resolve that issue or not? It could be that you listened, you thought you fixed it, and you really didn't. So are you circling back and making sure that you have a solution? Normalize positive conversations before a problem occurs. So when you're making your rounds, tell me one good thing that happened today. What? I'm supposed to talk about something good? And then tell me one person I need to recognize for doing a great job. Start cycling that positivity. So the next day you're not going to shock them, and in their head they're being like, oh my gosh, she's going to ask me something for good again. What is it I'm going to say? So if you start making them think differently, rewire their brains, and then increase your own resilience. That's something that we all need to do to create a more positive work environment. So what is resilience? Basically, it's being elastic. It's being able to bend and not break. A modern definition of resilience: advancing, you're working towards a goal, you're getting there. Despite, don't wait for adversity. You're proactive in what is going on. And then adversity, it's small and big things. You dropped your keys, your tech dropped the plate, the DR plate. You can't find your car in the mall. Whatever it is that's happening to you, those are adversities. So whenever your plate is so full as a leader, they're bringing things to you left and right. Things fall off. So that's why it's really important to have a cycle of circling back. And I can't handle one more thing. So that makes us close up and not maybe accept people that want to talk to us. So it's really important to learn how to focus and say, okay, what can I solve today, right now, versus what can wait? What's on fire and not on fire? I'm sure you guys are great at doing that every day. So resilient leaders, they hold up their hand and they say, yes, I'll do it, I'll volunteer. They perform tasks that other people get frustrated by. They're not afraid to fail. They see value in learning. They're curious. They ask great questions. So remember that. If somebody's asking you a lot of questions, it may not be that they're challenging you. They're engaged. They're wanting to learn more. But because we're automatically on that defensive side, we might think that they're challenging, and we might not be receptive of that. They're flexible. They're in mid-flight and they're rebuilding the plane. They're hopeful and they're realistic. They see risk but respond out of wisdom. They're watching other people. They see what's going on. They're not complainers. They're looking for ways to be part of the solution, and they pivot. Anybody know what pivot is? Any basketball players? That back foot stays planted. You're looking around how you're going to get to the goal. As leaders, that's what we have to do. We have to pivot. If this isn't working, you have to find a new way. Get some perspective. Step back and get an objective view. We get fouled and knocked down. We got to get back up. So what are we going to do? Ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing that could happen here? And be prepared for that. When you're prepared for the worst case scenario, it's probably always going to be better. The ratio of good to bad is 10 to 1. So keep that in mind whenever you're getting into that negative cycle. That's how you can overcome it. Did we overstate the problem? I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of, is it a snake or is it a rope? And it's obviously a rope coiled up. I don't know if you've seen that picture, but it's basically, I've showed it to my team before, and I've said, you guys keep saying it's a snake, but it's a rope. Look, it's a rope. You're making it out into the worst case scenario when it's really not that at all. So we have to kind of teach each other how to focus on that positive thing. We have to toughen up and we have to push ourselves. We can't coddle our young. We can't coddle everybody. We have to teach them how to overcome, to be more resilient. Be the architect of your own fate. Be a fighter. Take an honest inventory of your life. Did we cause our own speed bumps? So whenever I was having my personal difficulties at work, I'm like, did I cause this? What am I doing? You have to reevaluate everything that you're doing, everything that you're saying, making sure that your actions match what is the expectation. How can we develop resilience? We have to stay open-minded, make the best out of the worst case situation, no jumping to conclusions, and brainstorm with other people how you're going to do this. What are you going to do to overcome? Be patient and kind. So I don't know about you all, but I am my own worst critic. I will be in my head going, dummy, what did you do that for? What did you say that for? We have to have positive self-speak. We have to talk to ourselves the way that we should be talking to ourselves. We're trying at least. So just remember that your people are trying too. Nobody goes to work every day and says, I just hope I can screw this up. Nobody is saying that when they report to work. But for some reason, sometimes we feel that way. And that's not it. So what are they battling at home? You may not even know. So we have to be optimistic. We have to focus on the good. We have to focus on other people. What is it that motivates you? Maybe it's your lunch. Maybe it's your people at home. Maybe it's your dog, your favorite blanket. I don't know, but be optimistic. Focus on the positive things that make you happy. And have you ever noticed how big that windshield is when you're driving and this tiny little rearview mirror? It's because we should be focusing forward and stop reliving the past. That's where that co-rumination comes in, rumination. We keep like thinking about past whenever future is where we need to be guiding ourselves. We need to build great relationships. So I have a text group with, there's about, I don't know, 10 of us on it. We're called the Sippin' Sisters. And we get together once a year. And so we're texting each other and we're trying to build each other up. If somebody's going through a rough time, they'll say something about it, and then it's just like ping, 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 ping. You have to sometimes mute your, your little things. But it's really important to have a group that is building you up and is there for you. So develop those relationships so that you have that whenever you go through a bad time. So this is a quick exercise. Hopefully everybody has the piece of paper. I put them on the tables there. And there's some back here for you if you don't have one. It's like a little tiny square. In the little 1-inch box, and sorry, I didn't measure, I just cut them. But I want you to write on there, who wants you to succeed, who loves you in spite of your faults, and who is there for you no matter what. Those are the three people, the three types of people. So who wants you to succeed, who loves you in spite of your faults, and who's there for you no matter what. So I want you to write that in your little box. Your personal people. Who is it? Yeah, this is for you to keep. This is only for you. You're not going to share it. As many as you can fit. Yeah, however many you have. If you have a bunch, great. Who wants you to succeed, who loves you in spite of your faults, and who's there for you no matter what. Everybody done or still writing? So I want you to keep in mind that these are your people. When you run into problems, these are the people that you should go to with what you're going to ask them for help with. Those are your Vegas. Those are the people you can confide in. Those are your people that no matter what, they have your best interest in mind, okay? So we have to practice self-care. We have to take care of ourselves before we can care for others. So take a break, have a meal, get some sleep, and then making sure that you have a good work-life balance. What's sneaking up on you on the side? Are you doing a self-assessment? Are you making sure that you're doing all the good things for yourself? Are you taking walks? Are you doing those things that's going to make you be more healthy and more balanced? So I don't know if any of you have read Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, but she said something that has stuck with me. And most people think the opposite of work is the opposite of play is depression. So how often do you allow yourself to play? Vegging on the couch when you get home at night is not playing, okay? So it's doing something creative, something that, some hobby that you have. How many of you are taking time to actually take care of yourself? So that's something that I challenge you to do. Is it's crucial for self-care, for resilience. If you're not taking time for yourself, even if it's just a half hour, a couple times a week, even if you can't do it every night, something that you can do to self-care. So lift yourself up, and then that's going to help you when you go to work to have a more positive attitude. And your family will appreciate it too, probably, when you come back with a better frame of mind. So 2020 in a nutshell, these emojis represent me and my family, okay? So I'm going to go through them. First of all, November 2019, I had a rotator cuff, a labrum tear. It was 180 degree, which meant my shoulder kept dislocating. I had to have surgery. So I was in this brace. You can't see all of it, but I was like this for 6 weeks before I was even allowed to take it out. My husband had to dress me. It was horrible. I gave up on my independence. I couldn't drive. I was allowed to work. I would work with my laptop like this. So I did work. And it was just a horrible experience. I'm sure some of you have had some things that have been trying. 2020, COVID hit in March of 2020. That's when COVID hit in West Virginia, where I'm from. So our family traditions are getting together. Family, friends, we're always together. Holidays, any reason whatsoever, we're always together. I'm sure all of you experience the same thing, where all of a sudden, done. No more getting together because everything was closed up. So in May 28th, I got the call from my mom and dad. My dad was very sick. She said, "Can you come and get us and take him to the ER?" He was, 82 years old. He had bronchitis, and he was started getting sick around that age. And he was always getting something, and it wasn't unusual for him to have, like, he had even had RSV and was hospitalized. So he was hospitalized on a Thursday, took him in, and he had COVID. We had guarded them. We had not let them go anywhere. So we're not sure how he got COVID. Not sure. But anyway, we guarded them severely, and he ended up passing away on Sunday. So it was very quick. They called me on a Sunday and said that they had tried everything. He had, had coded 3 times, and there was really nothing they could do. So he passed away. I had to pack everything up. Since I drove him to the ER with my mom, I was exposed to COVID. And by that Sunday, I was already developing a fever. So I knew I had COVID. So I packed everything up, went up to my mom's house, had to break the news to her that my dad passed. And then I spent the week with her. And she had COPD, so I was worried about her. I was worried about her physically and emotionally. And nobody else was allowed to be around, because back then you didn't even go to the funeral home or anything. It was just very, very, bad. So fast forward to August, and August 29th at 5 a.m., I got a phone call from my brother saying that my nephew was in a side-by-side 4-wheeler accident at midnight. They had just found him. He had passed away. They said, go up to your mom, go to mom's house and break the news to her. So I get in the car, my husband goes with me, we drive up to my mom's, and I have to wake her up to let her know, because we didn't want the phone to ring and somebody else to tell her. So I had to break the news to her that my nephew had passed away. The bad thing was his daughter, 11 years old, was staying all night with my mom that night, so I had to break the news to her too. So that was a really bad thing. And so they were like 2 peas in a pod. That's a picture of them together. And he was raised at my house, basically. And because my brother had a store, so they were always tied up doing something. So he was always there. So it was very heartbreaking. So, our joke is they're together in heaven now, and they're both very happy, no doubt. So next, in October of 2020, I decided I needed a vacation. So I booked a 2-week vacation in Florida. We went to Englewood Beach, which is Minnesota Key. Beautiful if you ever have a place you want to go. And we were there for 2 weeks. My son and his now wife came over, and she had this cough. Well, she had that same cough in March. And I'm like, "Girl, what is going on?" She's like, "Oh, they told me I have asthma. They put me on Singulair." I'm like, "You got more than a cough. You need to go to the doctor." She said, "I've been to the doctor." I said, "When you get home, call them, tell them you need a chest x-ray." So we practiced. We're sitting out in the sand. I remember I'm going, "Put this in your phone. I have symptoms. I need a chest x-ray," because she didn't know how to advocate for herself. So she went back home, she called them, they did a chest x-ray. 2 weeks later, she calls me, she says, I still have this cough, I'm feeling bad. I'm like, call him back, tell him. So she called him back, and they were like, well, your chest, the mediastinum is a little bit wide, let's get a CAT scan. So they ordered a CAT scan on her, and by that time I'd already lost faith in her doctors. And I said, get a CD, we'll Zoom tonight, I'll look at your images. So the very first image that I'm like, oh no, what's going on? I was a CT tech, very wide mediastinum up there, and it just got worse. So whenever I'm looking at it, I'm trying not to react. That's supposed to be an enhanced CT, by the way. There was no contrast, it was all in her arm. Another story. But anyway, so I take the video to the radiologist the next morning. I have my iPhone, I videoed it, I showed it to him, and he starts cussing, and he doesn't cuss. And he said, her trachea is 5 millimeters. She's at risk of losing her airway. You need to call her right now and get her to the ER. So I called her, 9 a.m., she's at work. I'm like, hey, you need to go to the ER. She doesn't present as sick. She's still, she's lost all this weight, she's still coughing, but she doesn't really present as sick. And I was like, you need to go to the ER. She's like, oh, I'm working, I'll go maybe tonight. I'm like, no, go now. Go home, get your CD, get Cody, go to the ER. So they go, they get the CD, they walk in the ER. She gives the CD to the ER doctor, and he looks at her like, yeah, okay, whatever, because he says, my future mother-in-law tells me to come bring this in. So he looks at the images, and he comes back with 2 nurses. They're getting her on oxygen, they're getting her IVs in. She was in the hospital for a month. Long story short, classic Hodgkin's lymphoma. It took them forever to get her diagnosed because the tumor was so large and fast growing that it was dying. The tissue was dying so quickly as soon as it was sloughing off. So they did a bronch, they did a CT guided biopsy, and then they ended up having to go in and do an open biopsy to get that diagnosis on her. So she had chemo for a year. She was in remission for a year, and then it came back. She ended with a stem cell transplant at 23. She had chemo for another 9 months. She was at AHRA a couple years ago. Horrible hands and feet, like basically she couldn't feel. She drank a cup like this. It just caused so much damage to her tissues and her nerves. And now she's good. She was able to walk down that aisle. So happy ending for her. So, she's still in remission. Next, my mother-in-law, she had been in a nursing home. She had a stroke, and she wasn't able to care for herself. In this picture, it's Christmas. And you can see that's December of 2020. You can see the aide is in that yellow gown because she has COVID. They're in there, and they're gowned and gloved and masked up and everything. And they're opening the presents. We're standing outside of her window so that we can talk to her. And shortly after that, she ended up with a UTI. COVID was gone, so she was in the hospital. My husband was able to go see her. It was the first time in 9 months that anybody was able to actually go physically see her. And she was doing great. He videoed everybody, he Zoom called us, and we were able to see her. And then she got discharged from that, and she died 3 days later. So all of that happened. So now you see why those emojis represented 2020. So our family was tragically bent, but we were not broken. So whenever you have tragedy and loss, there's a lot of bad feelings that happen. There's sad, there's hopelessness, there's anger, fear, grief. But all of a sudden, you can start finding memories that you treasure. And that's what you have to focus on to get through those really hard times. The cynicism and sarcasm, that'll ever go away from me, but because that was new. And then the other thing was I was broken and I didn't realize it because all that happened and I was the one that had to do all these things for my family because I'm the organizer for my family. So whenever, I'm the person that used to cry whenever Ice Age was on. I cried when Frosty melted. I cried all of these things. Well, after this happened, after that year, my tears dried up. I did not cry. And then I think it was in maybe August of this year, we were watching a movie and I cried. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm broken again. And my husband says, no, you've been broken for the last 5 years. You're finally back to yourself. So that's how long it took me to go through this, horrible transition and get back to where I am, where I need to be. But I didn't realize it because you're just fighting, you're just going, you're just doing those things. So the reason I talk about this and to try to motivate you is you have to take care of yourself. And I was too proud to ever talk to anyone because I got this. I got a smile on my face and I got this going, and that's how I acted. But inside, I was definitely experiencing some bad things and I was not handling it. So you all need to make sure, what are your employees doing as well? So what I've learned, it's okay to take time for yourself. It's okay to say no. I am not doing that. Sorry. It's okay to not take that. I don't have time for that. If I'm going to take that, what are you taking off of my plate? It's a simple question. What's the priority? Cut off the toxic relationships. If somebody is burning up your time and you really don't have time for them, maybe it's your family. Maybe they're calling you and they're giving you your burdens and you really don't have time to listen to them. You listen, but then you're like, you know what? I'm sorry. I got to go. I'll call you back tomorrow. Maybe they'll be in a better frame of mind tomorrow than today. I'm not going to let a toxic person bring me down. And social media, it will rile you up in a heartbeat. Why do you do that to yourself? If you're in a place where you can't handle it, don't look at it. It's okay. Say basically your inner peace is more important than anything. So that's what you have to focus on. So passive outlook, if you don't feel, you don't have to care. And that's kind of where I was for a while. It wasn't that I didn't care, I just didn't feel. I purposely didn't have to feel. And that's why I cut myself off and I put myself in a little box. So compassion fatigue is very similar, because whenever you have compassion fatigue, you've seen so much, you've taken care of so many bad things that you just kind of shut yourself down. So there are some tests that you can do online to assess that. It's not too late. It's not too late to look at it, to see where you are, where do you rank, what are your scores, and what do you have to pay attention to. So online, there is that test that you can take. You can't pour from an empty cup. We talked about that. You have to make sure that you're not hiding your vulnerabilities. When you start talking to your teams and your families about the vulnerabilities that you have, all of a sudden you're going to open up and you're no longer a robot just going through the actions. If they can see you differently, that really helps build that relationship to be stronger and have trust. And then, are you exhausted or numb? Those are not good feelings to have. So today's the day to make that change, to take time for yourself. So please make sure that you do that. I want you to have a replenishment plan. Take a nap. We were taught that babies take naps. It's okay for us to take a little nap. Go to bed earlier if you can. Emotional connections. Make that call to the friend, the people that you wrote down on your papers. Make sure that you're talking to them frequently. Intellectually, making sure that you're not staring at the computer screen all day long every day. What is it that you're doing? Stimulating yourself. And then spiritually, I need to carve out 30 minutes a day to take a walk. Nature is what makes me feel much better about myself. Breathing. I know this sounds really stupid. We breathe all the time, but conscious breathing. Sometimes when we're in a bad way, we hold our breaths. So I want you to do this with me. Through your nose, big breath in. Let it out through your mouth. One more time. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. If you do that when you're in a bad jam, it will just make a whole difference in how you feel about everything. You're breathing through your heart. You're taking that time. I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm in this situation. I'm going to feel better about it. So control your thoughts by focusing on how much better you'll feel. Act the way you want to be, and all of a sudden, that's who you are. So if you're a positive person, I'm going to be a positive person, even if you're not feeling it, all of a sudden you're going to lift yourself up, and you are going to be, the way that you're acting is the way that you are. So take ownership of how you feel. Journaling is a really good way. You can do it on your Word document and delete it. Nobody will ever read it that way. You can just document however you want to get your words down. Some of us don't want to put it in a journal because somebody might read it someday. We'll burn it, I don't know. But journal, do something. The Word document and deleting the words, if you don't even save it, that really just getting it down on paper makes you feel a lot better. Attitude of gratitude. Part of being resilient is being grateful. So neuroscientists have found that participating in frequent acts of gratitude makes you feel happier. That's your gratitude circuit. So we automatically are wired to think negatively. That's just the way our brain works. So we have to teach ourselves to be grateful. So regular acts elevate physical and mental health. So try to practice, thank you so much. And then it's not intended to minimize your hardships, but it helps you manage tough times. Somewhere between real challenge and pure happiness is gratitude in the middle. The most resilient people are happy and pliable. Have you ever met a grumpy, resilient person? They're usually not grumpy. And then the level of your resilience will be found at how grateful you are. Definition of grateful. So in the past 7 days, how many people have you shown gratitude to? Are you in the habit of just not being grateful? Are you in the habit of not saying thank you? I think most people just, culture has taught us to say thank you, but there are some mean people out there I've met. So the other thing is, how many people are different than you that you're showing gratitude to? So it's basically saying, I feel like I am only grateful to people that are like me. Sometimes that happens. So check your internal biases. Are you only grateful to certain people? Be grateful to everyone, and that builds your gratitude as well. It's not just, oh, thinking about how I'm walking in somebody else's shoes. It's actually imagining having their shoes on and walking in it. Some of us are really good. We have a lot of empathy, sympathy. We jump right in, and I'll cry when somebody else that way. So it's really getting to the feeling of putting other people's shoes on, and oh my goodness, how do they carry that around? How do they walk in that life every day? So just remember that empathy and gratitude are connected, because you have to show empathy to be able to be grateful that you have something that, you know, is bringing you up in life, that's making you happy. So mindful meditation, I've been in some mindful meditation talks before. It's basically visualizing, you know, just being in your head and clearing it out, thinking about your arm, thinking about your elbow. That's really mushy for me. Some people find a lot of gratefulness in meditating. So I put that slide up there in case you all like to meditate. So a review on quiet quitting, quiet firing, and quiet cracking. So quiet firing, the manager fails to adequately address the issues. Quiet quitting, the employee no longer feels like work is life. And quiet cracking, the person is stuck, and internally they're very disengaged. They don't know what to do. Resilience is the ability to, no matter what's going on, focus on today, practice gratitude, mindful meditation, and practice positive self-talk to get yourself through. Resilience can be taught and learned. Not everybody knows how to be resilient. We have to teach our people how to be resilient. We have to teach ourselves sometimes. Stay connected to your values. Don't let somebody push you into something that's not comfortable for you. You have to make sure that you're true to yourself. And share your own vulnerabilities with your team to make deep connections. So a challenge. Does anybody in here have their boss beside them? Is their boss in the room? Yes. Okay, so you do not have to answer this truthfully. You don't have to answer this truthfully, okay? Did anybody write your boss on your square? How many of you think that your employees would write your name on their square? So as a leader, our employees should think we want them to succeed. We love them in spite of their faults, and who is there for you no matter what. As a leader, our people should feel this from us. That's a big challenge. Sometimes we are just trying to get by, and we don't take the time to think about the relationship. When they go home at night, are they kicking the dog because of how they're experiencing work? Are we bringing that on to our employees? So think about that. I mean, for the first time in my many years, I've been able to say, yes, I would write my boss's name on that square. I have a great boss. I've had great bosses prior, the one that I talked about. And when I moved to Florida, I had a great boss. And then the one I have now at MTMI, a great boss. So like whenever you're looking at your employers, your bosses, they need to show these things to you. And if they're not, how can you fix that? Like, how can you develop that relationship of trust? So that's a challenge for you with your boss, and then also with your employees.